"Shut your mouth." That was Jamie Raskin, on his feet, finger pointed directly at the FBI Director of the United States, his voice tearing through the hearing room like a thunderclap. And Patel, the man who had walked into that chamber that morning like he owned every badge, every file, and every secret buried inside the J. Edgar Hoover building, sat frozen at the witness table, his jaw locked, his eyes somewhere between shock and the dawning terrible recognition that he had massively miscalculated who he was dealing with. It took exactly 31 minutes to expose a $10 billion cover-up, and by the end of it, Patel wasn't just cornered, he was breaking on live television. Here's exactly what happened. Patel arrived at the House Judiciary Committee that Tuesday morning, like a man who had already decided how the day would end. Dark suit, folded American flag pin on his lapel. His legal team, 4 attorneys, 2 senior advisors, arrayed behind him like a defensive wall. His staff had prepped him for every conceivable line of attack: civil liberties questions, surveillance overreach, the predictable Democratic volleys about politicization. He had rehearsed deflections for all of it, smooth, practiced, airtight, but nobody had told him about Raskin's folder, and that folder was about to end everything. At the far end of the committee table, Raskin sat completely still, yellow legal pad, pen moving in slow, deliberate strokes. Through the entire first hour of the hearing, he hadn't asked a single question. Other members took their shots. Patel deflected smoothly, cited statistics, mentioned arrest numbers, smiled when it suited him. And with every clean answer he delivered, his shoulders dropped a fraction. His posture relaxed. His voice took on that familiar edge of a man who believes he is winning. That was the trap. Because Raskin wasn't waiting for his turn, he was waiting for Patel to feel safe. At 11:09 a.m., Chairman Nadler called on him. Raskin looked up from his legal pad for the first time. He reached into the folder, unhurried, deliberate, and produced a single document. He held it up just long enough for every camera to lock onto it. "Director Patel," he said, voice almost quiet, almost gentle. "You promised Americans full transparency on every significant investigation under your leadership." He set it down. "I'm going to hold you to that promise, starting right now." Patel nodded, confident, almost amused. "I welcome the opportunity, Congressman." He had no idea what was coming, but the reporters in the gallery did, because they had seen Raskin work before, and they had stopped typing. "Director Patel." Raskin's voice dropped half a register. "Why haven't Americans received a full, unredacted accounting of what FBI investigators actually found at Mar-a-Lago?" The nod stopped. Something shifted behind Patel's eyes, fast, almost imperceptible, like a door closing in a room far away. His right hand, resting flat on the table, tightened almost imperceptibly around his pen. The Mar-a-Lago matter involved a legally complex, sensitive set of circumstances that required— "I didn't ask about complexity," Raskin cut in. One clean, quiet interruption. "I asked why the American people still don't have a full accounting, years later, from the agency that conducted the search." He reached into the folder. "Because I have an internal FBI review document, dated March 3, 2025, classified at the TSSCI level, that describes findings your office has never disclosed to Congress." He laid it on the table. "Would you like to tell this committee what's in it, or would you prefer I read it aloud?" The color shifted in Patel's face, not dramatically, in slow, visible gradations, like a light dimming behind glass. He blinked twice. "Congressman, I'm not able to confirm or deny the existence of specific classified, authenticated by your own records office," Raskin said, voice flat and precise. "Congressional subpoena, February 19th. He looked directly at Patel. "So let me ask the question a different way. You publicly defended the president's handling of classified materials, before you were FBI director, before this investigation concluded. Did that prior position affect how your office approached the review of related evidence?" 11 seconds of silence. "My public statements prior to confirmation have no bearing on the professional conduct of career FBI investigators." That's not an answer. Raskin was already reaching into the folder again. He produced a second document, and laid it on the desk with a precision that made no sound at all. The quietness of it was somehow worse than if he had slammed it. "This is a series of internal FBI communications, 11 emails, spanning 4 months, between your senior staff and outside counsel connected to individuals under active federal review." He looked up. The subject line of the first email reads, "Evidence Timeline, Priority Realignment." "Does that phrase mean anything to you, Director?" "Congressman, any communications between FBI leadership and legal counsel would be subject to privilege protections that— 11 emails. Raskin's voice hadn't risen, it didn't need to. 11 documented communications, coordinating what your office called priority realignment on a $10 billion fraud investigation. An investigation, Director, that showed zero activity for 9 consecutive months. He held the document up, just long enough. 0 arrests, 0 subpoenas issued, 9 months. He set it back down. That is not case management. That is a case being buried. The room went silent in a way that felt physical. Two reporters had stopped typing. Patel's lead attorney was writing something fast, but Patel didn't look at him. He was looking at Raskin, and Raskin was already reaching into the folder again. Director Patel. The careful, almost gentle tone was gone now. Something colder had replaced it. Career prosecutors inside your own bureau, not political appointees, career investigators, wrote a memo the same week this investigation went silent. They stated, in professional language, that deprioritizing this case would allow primary targets additional time to restructure financial holdings and eliminate recoverable documentation. He held up the third document. Your own investigators told your office, in writing, that people were going to walk free because of this decision, and your office never responded to them, not one word. His voice dropped to almost nothing. Why? Patel's answer lasted 38 seconds and said nothing. His practiced fluency had fragmented completely. What remained was the sound of a man navigating a collapsing floor. Director Patel, flat, absolute. He wasn't reading from notes. He had lived inside these documents for weeks. The FBI is supposed to investigate wrongdoing regardless of who committed it, regardless of who is sitting in the Oval Office. Both hands flat on the desk now. You took an oath to that principle. And yet, this $10 billion investigation went dark. Primary targets never interviewed. Critical subpoenas never issued. 9 silent months, while financial assets were quietly moved and permanently placed beyond reach. His voice began to rise, not with anger, with something more controlled and therefore more devastating. You have given this committee process language, privilege language, complexity language. Not once have you answered what every American watching right now deserves answered. He held the folder in the air. What is the FBI hiding, and who needed it hidden? Patel opened his mouth. Shut your mouth. The room detonated. The sound hit the chamber like a physical force. 3 people in the gallery flinched. I am not finished. Raskin leaned forward, both hands pressed flat, voice cutting through the silence with a precision that made shouting sound surgical. A $10 billion fraud investigation, buried, dead, 9 months of zero activity, and you sit here and call it routine prioritization? This is your bureau, your accountability. You are going to explain to every American watching right now, and millions of them are watching, exactly why this case disappeared on your watch, or I will assume the answer is in these 4 remaining documents. Explain it. The silence that followed lasted 14 seconds. 14 seconds where the most powerful law enforcement official in America sat at a congressional witness table and could not speak. His jaw worked, once, twice, producing nothing. But Raskin didn't wait for him to recover. He reached into the folder again, unhurried, deliberate. He laid down the 4th document, wire transfer records, 19 of them, each transaction documented, each destination traced. Each one timestamped inside the exact 9-month window when the investigation went dark. The total across all 19 transfers, $340 million, moved, restructured, in several cases, permanently beyond reach. Director Patel. Raskin's voice was very quiet now, the kind of quiet that is somehow louder than anything before it. These transfers didn't happen in a vacuum. They happened while your bureau sat on its hands, while subpoenas went unsigned, while career investigators were told to stand down. He looked at Patel, one full beat. What exactly were you promised? Patel's eyes moved, just slightly. Because this isn't incompetence. Incompetent people don't coordinate 9 months of silence. They don't issue priority realignment directives in writing. They don't leave 11 emails documenting the timeline of a buried investigation. His voice dropped further. This is protection. The FBI under your watch has become a shield, not a sword, and every American watching right now can see it. How much longer, Director? How many more cases have to disappear before someone in that building tells the truth? Because this isn't just about $10 billion. This is about who the FBI is working for. And right now, it is not working for the American people. So what was the arrangement? What were you promised? What did you get? Patel opened his mouth. And while you consider that, Raskin continued, not giving him an inch of air. One more question. He held up the 5th document. You stood at that podium and told Americans transparency mattered. They believed you. He set it down. Yet years later, Mar-a-Lago's key findings remain unaccounted for. 9 months of zero activity on a $10 billion case, career investigators silenced in writing. And you, the man who publicly defended the president's handling of classified materials before your confirmation, are now responsible for answering all of it. He leaned forward, voice flat, surgical. Why should a single American trust the FBI under your leadership to provide honest answers about anything? 9 seconds of silence, different from the others. Patel's fingers dropped from his face to the table. He pressed them flat against the surface, steadying himself. I will provide this committee a full written response, he said, his voice barely carrying to the microphone. To the extent permitted by applicable legal and classification, no. Raskin said it quietly, without anger, almost gently. You won't, because you've had months. And what the American people received was silence. He closed the folder. The FBI is supposed to be bigger than any presidency, bigger than any political relationship, bigger than any promise made to any individual in exchange for protection. He looked at Patel one final time. Under your leadership, is it? Patel said nothing. He was escorted from the hearing room by his security detail 8 minutes later, head down, saying nothing to anyone. At the exit, just before the door, he stopped, put his hand flat against the wall, stood there for 3 full seconds, as if he needed it to hold himself up, before he walked out. Raskin spoke to reporters in the hallway. He was brief. No one is above accountability, he said. Not a political benefactor, not the director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. A pause. The documents don't lie. People do. The $10 billion had been hidden. Inside a case file no one was supposed to open. It had been sitting there, waiting. Jamie Raskin opened it. And now America is left with the one question that no written response, no classification claim, no process language can answer. What exactly was Kash Patel promised? And who needed $10 billion to disappear badly enough to promise it? Drop your answer below. Because the people in that hearing room couldn't get one. Maybe you can.